agenda, and I would like to first just start with my deep appreciation to Claire, and in some sense I really want to say and single out Michael for this. We have a tremendous set of papers, and Michael's coming here and starting to work with and if I can say Ross as well, in developing the papers meant that I think our committee is really starting to climb the maturity curve, which is where I am very keen that the committee goes. So certainly you, Claire, but also particularly you, Michael, thank you very much for the input to what I think are a quality set of papers for this meeting. It poses a problem for us, which is time. I'm told that I have to have this meeting finished by 11, and when you have good papers, there's always the perverse that actually you want to have better debate. And after all, we are a committee of risk, where the thing about risk and assurance is that you want to be able to debate them. So I am going to have to try and rein myself in first and foremost, and then potentially you folk, with an attempt to try and do it this way. I'd like to, by 9:30, to have got through to item 16. So item 16, if you refer to your agendas, is a paper with a report essentially on our finance system implementation update, the second last and the last items in public. I'd like to be there by 9:30 if I could. We also have a substantial item in relationship, or items in relationship to public excluded as well, and we need to have the hour and a half that I would have in the remainder for that to be able to finish by 11 o'clock. So that's my intention, if we can do it that way. Can I just note, please, in all good formality, I've gone past it, but can I remind you that we are being live streamed as is appropriate, and if anybody is joining us by live stream, I would welcome you, but particularly Marcus. We haven't met before, but look, thank you for finding the time, the effort to come in from where I understand you are elsewhere around the country. It's great to have you here as well. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for that. My pleasure.
And anybody else from the, I think we've got the rest of the committee here, so it's good. Alan, well done, you're here. We do have a couple of apologies. Bex is unable to be here today, as is Alex. I have no other apologies, so from the chair I'd like to move that those apologies are sustained. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Not staying already, aren't I? Rangi, sorry. Thank you, Rangi. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? It's carried. I haven't been informed of anybody wishing to be heard in public forum. The interest register has, through the good work of Malavika, has been updated, which is great, mainly because I was a bit slow and tardy. Is there any matters on the agenda today that people need to raise their interests over? There being none, we'll continue. Okay, can we please move to the minutes of our last meeting, which actually was an odd set of meetings. You remember, essentially it was the 14th of December, but we were also trying to adopt our annual report, and you will recall that the meeting was adjourned till 8:30 on the 15th, and then because of the contingencies of working through that, we adjourned that and we met at 2:30 in the afternoon to conclude the hard yards of both Michael and his team and the auditors. So we have 3 sets of minutes, the main meeting on the 14th and 2 short meetings on the 15th. Unless there's any objection, I propose that we treat all 3 papers in one hit. Are there any matters of accuracy or correction that people would like to raise at this point from those meetings? I have reviewed the minutes. They look like the meeting that I was at, so that's helpful. So look, I'd like to move from the chair that we receive these as a correct record of the meeting. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Darren. All those in favour, please say aye.
Bruce, were you actually at the second 2 meetings?
Yes, I was. Yes, I was. I zoomed in.
That's right.
Yep, certainly was.
The last one.
Yeah, fair point. No, but I definitely was. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? It's carried. Thank you. Right. So if we could move then, please, to the report on the long-term plan. That would be great. Thank you. And Rhiannon. Good morning. How are you?
Morning. Thank you, Chair. I'll take the report as read. I think the most important thing is that at this point the long-term plan is still on schedule. Their resourcing remains tight, but as the report states, probably the audit part of the process is the most significant. I might just pass to the GM of Finance and Assurance if he wishes to say any more about audit.
Just to let the committee know that audit is in their final stages, so we're expecting something by the end of the week in relation to the audit opinion. At this point, audit is still on a non-qualified approach, so that is good from our perspective, but we're still waiting to hear back from them today.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Short and sweet. Well, I like it. Are there questions from the committee? Right, if I just get a couple of very quick ones in here. Let's just go to the table on page 21. This becomes critical, and I appreciate that I hear the point about resourcing. We'll get to the risks pretty quickly. But can I just check? So firstly, we are going to have, let's just remind ourselves, consultation document is what Michael was talking about in terms of an audit opinion, and is obviously for staff and for you as councillors the first point of completion, so you can go to consultation. You are looking to adopt that on the 30th of March, correct?
29th.
29th. Okay, absolutely. Sorry, so the table isn't. Yeah, I get it. So anyway, we are aiming, and it appears that you are on schedule for that, Michael.
Yes.
Brilliant, including the fact that the audit opinion has to go. Obviously, consultation goes through that, and we'll just come back to that because there is a request for a motion as far as that's concerned, with then subject to auditors. Have you got a date set on them yet?
Audit's hopefully going to have their draft finished by the end of today for us to have a review.
Oh, sorry, I mean in terms of the LTP. It just has to be confirmed.
Yeah, no, we haven't got the actual dates that they're going to be in yet for that component.
Right. Okay, that's a worry. Can I be honest? Let's check that we can get that right. That's not necessarily a problem for you. It may well be auditors uncertain at this stage. But given we're heading to a 30 June adoption date, you can't go past 30 June. So I'd be very keen, Michael, if we could make certain that with the auditors we have even a best estimates at this stage. Otherwise, it's difficult to manage, please. Right. The consultations. There is a or part of the resolution is that we note the plan for the management consultation in case of COVID resurgence. Is there anything there that you'd like to tell us about that, please, seeing you've asked us for a motion?
Only that I thought from a risk management point of view that obviously this is something that will be on councillors' minds. The plan lays out the plan for level 2, level 3 or level 4, depending on which circumstance may arise during the time of consultation, either before or during. And it notes that we will continue the consultation irrespective of which level that we're in, and lays out how we will achieve that.
Brilliant. Darren, you've got a question?
More a comment, Chair, just that this was a process that was interrupted by COVID last year, and we were doing that on the hoof this year. We're going into it with a strategy, and I'm relatively comfortable around that. Plus, we won't be the only council in that position if it happens. So obviously it's one of the key things that could interrupt the whole process, but I'm comfortable with what the report's recommending.
Thanks, Darren. Appreciate that. And I just wanted to check this is consistent with national approaches. I assume it does look a similar thing. The only thing that worried me was, are there any compliance obligations in terms of consultation if we move to the higher levels?
Yes, this takes into account those requirements. That's why I'm recommending staff be reallocated to make phone calls to people, because that is the largest issue. It arose in conversations around annual plan last year, so we sought legal advice at that point. So that's why the plan's laid out as it is.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Right, if we just move then to the tables, please, 26 and page 26 and 27. Again, very well set out, thank you, in terms of the risks, if I've got my colour coding right, blue is the medium and is the highest. And look, and I think as you quite rightly indicate, that generally comes round to resourcing. I presume in terms of the consultation document, we are broadly, so to speak, there. The critical question would be the ongoing work around consultation, assessment of the feedback through consultation, and then the finalisation of the LTP. So that latter bit still remains a stretch.
Yes, we're expecting probably a large number of submissions, particularly around high-profile projects like the museum, but also the proposals to the change to the rating process.
Yes.
There's no doubt there's very limited team numbers in the strategy and policy team, so processing all of those submissions and booking hearings is going to be a challenge. Nevertheless, we've road tested it. We've got technology lined up. We're working closely with the governance team to try and make that really smooth transition. There is very little time between the submissions closing and the hearings and then deliberation. The other aspect is if the councillors hear from the public feedback that leads them to wish to change significant parts of the long-term plan, then obviously the constraints within the finance team around the ability to change the budgets is the second element of concern, because you'll see there's a very tight turnaround between deliberation and audit arriving on the 28th of May. So that's the second and very significant pinch point.
Thank you. That's very clear. So all we can do is we can just acknowledge that we can only at this stage acknowledge the risk. You have got plans in place along with Michael, and it's a case of monitoring that risk and how it comes out, I guess, at this stage. Correct? That's good. Thank you. That's very clear. Can I do a final sweep? Any other questions people would like to raise about this? It's a great piece of work, but we will be going down to the wire. Right, can we move to the recommendations, please? Firstly, we receive. Secondly, that we note the risk schedule, which we've just gone through. And thirdly, as has been asked, we note the quite sound, including the legal compliance aspects of having to alter the nature of our consultation should the unwanted events of moving up levels actually occur. Is somebody prepared to move this motion, please? Thank you, Darren. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Rangi. I'll put all three motions. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? It's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your report. Can we please go to the quarterly report? It's Jamie or Michael or both. Thank you. Jamie, in your hands, sir.
Yep. Firstly, I'd like to table a draft financial summary. Hopefully it's been distributed around. Do we need to get that approved or put on the table? Or?
We can do that through the resolution. I'm happy for it to be tabled. If you could talk us through it, please, that would be great.
Cool. Firstly, I'll start off with just why we're delaying the quarterly report for another month. Due to some staff resourcing we've had to put onto other projects like getting the annual report across the line, we've had to delay just because we haven't had the resources to fulfill what we normally do in the process. We're also getting familiar with the system as well, and we don't want to put up something that we're not confident in ourselves. That said, so what you've got in front of you is a draft, what we've got in the system at the moment from a top level. Currently showing a deficit of 2.3 million against a forecast of 6.7. Just the key points out of it. From operational side, the big one that stands out is the other expenses is quite a lot lower than what we were anticipating. There is still a few costs still to go into this area and accruals as well. So we do believe that will come a lot closer to the forecast at the end. The other big thing to step out for is on this second page is just with the capital area. So at the moment, the numbers show we're just under 9 million for the first 2 quarters of the year. There is, again, a number of accruals that need to go into this area to bring it up a wee bit, but it still will be looking to be below forecast. And I'll just open it for questions there.
Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate the fact that you've tabled the paper as indicative of some of the pressure that currently is being faced in the finance function. So I am grateful that rather than just the blank paper, so to speak, that we've had, we actually have that. So well done. What I'm hearing you say, if I've got this correctly, is the primary issue is probably partly systems related, which is you haven't got all the accruals in at this stage. Therefore, the full picture isn't able to be shown. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. No, I appreciate the honesty. That's what we need. I'll open it up for discussion. We do have a separate discussion later on about the system itself. So if we could avoid that, but talk about the results. Is there anything people would like to raise on this, please? We also, by the way, have a separate discussion further down the track around the capex as well. But it may be that there are questions here that people have as well. Yes, Ross.
Firstly, in terms of the accruals, is that work actually done?
It's set to be complete this week.
Yeah, so it's a matter of timing, and we've got you a week too early, is what you're saying. Yes, yeah.
And just secondly, I presume on the last page you say investments I presume it means increase rather than decrease?
No, it actually is a decrease. So we hold 30 million in advance to the holding group as an investment on our books. So they're looking to repay that at the end of this month, and as a consequence, we'll also repay our debt as well. So from a net debt perspective, there'll be no impact.
Yes, okay, no, that's fine. You get that? Ross, was anything else you had to raise? No, that's fine. I appreciate that it's a reasonably quick look at this stage. I just wonder if we could have a very, yes, I've got it right. We just have a quick look at the last paragraph of the actual substantive paper sent through by Jamie and by Michael, recognising in good faith they're trying to be upfront with us where they're at. But look, let's be comfortable that the actual approach they're taking is there. So performance policy and partnership, get that right there, Darren, that's your group. You will get financials for the at your April 2021 meeting.
Yes.
So in effect, the week that you needed, if we were a week later, that would have given rise to this report being strengthened. You will get to the performance policy and partnership in April, correct?
Yes.
Good. And with March coming reasonably quickly on its heels in May the following month.
Yep, correct.
So essentially progressively catching up. Yep. Good. That's what we needed, because June is, of course, balance date. So there we go. Okay. Any other questions?
Just by comment, Chair, they were actually due at our February meeting, but at that point we were already alerted to
Yes.
the delays. So.
Yeah. No, look, appreciate that, Darren. And look, obviously very keen your committee keeps a close eye. There's a few questions I've got when we get to the Tech 1 ones, so we'll worry about the system when we get there. Jamie, thank you for that. Could I have somebody move, please, the motions firstly we receive, and secondly we know at the time of writing we've received a high-level summary. Thank you, Rangi. Do I have a second to thank you, Nobby? Any discussion on the motion? I should put that actually before I put it. There isn't. I'll put the motions, please. All those in favour, please say aye.
No.
Those against? It's carried. Thank you for that, Jamie. Appreciate that. The draft risk management framework. Peter, welcome. We haven't met. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to shake your hand before the meeting, but it's great to have you on board. This again is, if I can just give the committee the benefit of my views, this is tremendous that we again are starting to climb that maturity curve, and one of the first places we go is by having a policy, dare I say it, and this is great to see it going. So Peter, I'm in your hands. If you give us a nutshell of your paper, I'll then open it for discussion.
Thank you. Firstly, morning, Mr. Chair, councillors, your worship. I'll take the report as being read. I'd just like to highlight a couple of areas. Firstly, what is risk? And in this instant, the definition of risk is the effect of uncertainty on achieving an objective. So a clear understanding of a council's objectives is the first key step in managing risks, and these objectives will come from our long-term plan. You may have noted in the draft policy that the sources of risk table on page 9 is blank. There is a requirement to develop the council's risk appetite, and to achieve this, a workshop will be conducted with council prior to the June Risk and Assurance Committee meeting, we will work through that table and complete the sources of risk table so we can develop our risk appetite as a council. Thank you. Open to questions.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Right. Doke, I'll open it up for questions from the committee. Yes, Rangi.
On last Wednesday, we were in Wanaka, some of us were, for a Three Waters workshop. Now, coming away from that workshop, all I could see was risk. And council has two options it's faced with. One is staying in, and one is opting out. And for council to choose whatever option moving forward, I see it as risk, choosing which option presents the less risk. There are no benefits because you expect the Three Waters to be provided. Now, looking at the risk of staying in, I asked a reasonably simple question: would our 30-year long-term infrastructure asset renewal plan, would that stay in place? And they said no. So it would make you wonder what's going to happen. Are they just looking in the short term, and we could be effectively cast aside? You don't know. So that's a risk of staying in. But then opting out, you have the risks of the compliance levels, which we don't know, and they could be just unachievable on the budget, on the finance we have. So that decision, would it feed through this framework? Would it come through?
Yeah, no, I like your question because it's quite a good one. It's what I would call a strategic risk. Undoubtedly, it's big. So, Peter, your views? How this framework enables that sort of risk to be integrated?
Yes. Yeah.
How?
We will run through the process of going through a workshop on the risks, and we'll create the scores. We'll look at what the mitigation is and what controls there may be for both options, i.e. staying in or opting out of it. And council would then be able to make an informed decision on which way to go.
So if I can just get for my clarification, if that's okay, Peter. So our workshop in June would be, amongst other things, identifying what I've just described and Rangi's described, but I've shortened it to being strategic risk. We will have a chance as a committee to define what are the big risks that we believe are affecting the city.
Yes.
Cracker. That's what we need to do. So, Rangi, that's my view, the answer. We're going to have to deal with that when we have our workshop in June.
Because that would be very helpful in making this decision.
Yeah.
The other sort of more minor comment I have, there was a mention of dashboard type systems instead of it states that starting simple with spreadsheet based approach, which I really appreciate because I'm not a fan of dashboards. I mean, there's quite a few cars driving around with the oil light on, and it doesn't help anybody. I mean, you basically, with a risk, you actually identify it, you look at the mitigation, and then you monitor it. And I see dashboards as being a way that you look at it, and it doesn't get into you the same way as someone writing down, "We're in the shit," So,
Yeah.
I'm quite happy where we are, and not even go near the dashboard.
I assume that's a technical word you're using there, Rangi, if I can...
It comes from infrastructure.
It comes from infrastructure.
It's a brown water phase.
Thank you for that. And so there's some feedback about the nature of the sort of feedback that Rangi at least would like to. Other members have views around the policy, please. One of the things, Peter, that I was just trying to look for, and I think I get it progressively, and I go back to what are the big risks. One of my favourite word at the moment is existential. The Three Waters one is almost existential for any territorial local authority right at the moment. Can I just check or ask you just to recheck the policy? Because when I looked at page 38 of page 38 of our agenda. I don't know what that is in terms of the actual, it's page 4 of the actual policy. When I looked at 2 and the risk registers, I get it. This policy is very much driven from the bottom up. which strikes me as absolutely traditional and makes a lot of sense. We are working with staff to identify risks at a functional level. We're expecting departmental managers to own those risks. It moves into the ELT. They in their own right, form a risk group, one of the lines of defence. But then obviously there's also us as a risk and assurance committee. And to some extent, we want to also ensure the strategic or the top-down risk is covered, which goes back to Rangi's point. I didn't get that flavour in the risk framework until I got to the appendix, when you started to describe some of the risks. So if I could make a plea, please, if you could just relook at the policy, which to me otherwise is pretty good, that we get this sense of what is the role of the Risk and Assurance Committee, and particularly as its guardianship for those big strategic risks. I do have one other point that I'd like to make, which is actually the place of internal audit. And I would like us, in the fullness of time, I'd rather get this going on the risk side, but in the fullness of time, I'd like us to develop an assurance policy, which really fits under the framework. It's our name, risk and assurance. We need to have a sense of actually how we gain assurance that the risks themselves are being managed, and internal audit obviously is a key function as far as that's concerned. Brilliant. Right, I'll just check my notes. Anybody else got any other comments while I do that? Are we comfortable, guys? We are? Yeah, Nobby.
Yeah, just as a reinforcement of what Rangi said, I guess. I was also at the Three Waters as well, and that's probably the biggest decision we're going to make in the next 10 years is not the cost of fresh water, but it's whether we stay in or whether we opt out. And when I think about the information we'll need to make that, we can't just do it in a single workshop. We're going to need some real expertise to tell us about what the cost is to stay out. And the issue about if we stay in is a moving feast. I guess Rangi and I and others have been to several meetings with the DIA, and the commonality through those meetings is they don't know what staying in is actually all about. We keep getting told that it's economy of scale, which is a cost factor, and yet in the same breath they say that doesn't actually apply to Otago Southland because there's no economy of scale. We're too widely spread, and our networks are too widely spread. So the cost to the community will probably be the same. It won't matter whether we're in or out, the cost will be the same. The issue for me is how do you compare? And the second issue is what will our, Rangi touched on it, what will our future investment be in infrastructure if we're in a coalition, which the coalition will probably, the region will probably be South Island, given Queenstown and Dunedin have high needs, and so does Christchurch. I think investment in Southland and Invercargill will be very low for a long period of time, where if we stayed alone, it may not be. So,
Nobby, thank you for that.
It's a complex issue.
Can I just say that this really reflects the importance of us with this workshop in June. And I mean, we are starting from behind the start line, in that we don't have our risk register up now. So this is a maturity issue for us to get the speed up. Because if this was, if we already had our top risk register, this would be something that we would be talking at least quarterly. Bearing in mind that the risk committee doesn't run the work that you need to do to be able to respond appropriately to the Three Waters. It's something which I presume elsewhere you've got governance arrangements in place, or will have governance arrangements in place to actually deal with the matter. Is that, I take it that's correct, Claire? That's a reasonable comment. At some stage, may not be there yet. You've only just been to Wanaka. You're still finding out what the story is, but that will be the case. We as a risk committee should have a concern. Have we acknowledged the risk? Well, we have. Actually, what are our controls in place to make certain that we make decisions in a timely way with the best information? Right. I sense a combination of we've probably got some acceptance around the draft policy as it stands, with some comments for you to consider, Peter. But I think also we are reflecting to the meeting that actually, while it's been used as an example, not unnaturally, Three Waters is a significant challenge which is immediate on the horizon, not on the horizons with us now. Can I move to the resolutions, please, which is that we firstly receive the report with thanks, Peter. We endorse the risk management framework, policy and process for introduction across the council, in brackets with suitable amendment, close brackets, as suggested at the committee, that is. In the committee notes, the risk appetite table will be worked through at the next risk and assurance meeting. Can I just change that also, please, to the committee notes, the risk appetite, or the strategic risks and risk appetite table will be worked with with the councillors and mayor prior to the next risk and assurance meeting. Sorry, then there was one other question there. I presume that also includes the independents, please. I think otherwise it wouldn't be the best workshop. You need to have your independent members there as well.
Yes.
Right, so sorry, Malavika, I've got this all over the place. I would like to suggest that the third one says the committee notes that the strategic risks, or the committee notes that the identification of the strategic risks and definition of our risk appetite, you can drop the word table, will be worked through with councillors and councillors, mayor and independent members of the Risk and Assurance Committee prior to the next meeting. I mean, nothing worse. I'd hate having people watch me type in public, so you're doing well. Yep, prior to the next. Yeah. Yeah.
And what about the second one? Do you want that to?
Yes, please. So endorse the draft risk management framework, policy and processes, including suggested amendments made at the meeting for introduction across the council. Seeing that's almost my wording, I propose that I will put the motion. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Nobby. I think we'll treat them all as one. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? It's carried. Thank you. Right, moving along, insurance. Michael, thank you.
So this report is on the insurance that we've taken for the year. We're out of sequence in relation to this reporting. Normally we'd come to you prior to the insurance or being adopted. Insurance is from the November period, so we've adjusted that in the sequence, which is later in the agenda around the annual work program. I'll take the report as read, and we're just looking for getting assurance from the council that this cover is seen as adequate from their perspective.
Thanks, Michael. So look, from my take, I tell you, it's not actually inappropriate. It's just that actually in some ways the real thing is to choose what cover you want to take going forward when you balance it up against the risks and the risks you are prepared to take on board or carry as a council. Here we've got a report on what we have, so it's valuable in its own right. Do I have questions from the committee at all about the insurances we carry? Oh, sorry, Ross.
One, Bruce. The cover looks very comprehensive. The only question I'd have is around the business interruption. And do you consider 24-month indemnity appropriate, or have you looked at a shorter indemnity period and therefore reduced premium, given how long it might take to get up and running?
We haven't at this stage, but I can take that on advisement if you wish us to look at that.
Yes.
Yes, so Tim.
Is the insurance cover, should I be at this meeting?
I'm comfortable, Sir Tim, that we are reporting on the cover we have in place. I'm comfortable that it's quite appropriate for you to still be in the room. Yes, Nobby.
Michael, on page 56, which is the second page, and it talks about professional indemnity. Is that the coverage that's for elected members?
No, that's the coverage for council itself and its operations.
So where does our elected member coverage fit? I was scrolling through that, I couldn't see it.
That's part of the Local Government Act side of it. So it sits separate to that from that perspective.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, Rangi.
So just following on from Nobby's question, So the LGA, they have to, the insurance has to respect the LGA and what it says. The Act, so if the Act covers the indemnity for the members, then it would then not opt out of it or have any clause that would actually go against what the Act says.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any other questions people would like to raise? I just note, and I'm sure this is really more as much Michael for the next meeting. But of course, one of the things that we'll have to weigh in the balance as we move to the next meeting, where we would consider what is the cover that is appropriate to purchase. If I've got this right in terms of the key policies and the big numbers, given the range of years that Michael's helpfully shown us, I think I've seen at least a 30% increase in premium over that time, and I would suspect that this year that it would be no lesser change in terms of the increases, and in fact even we might have to accept higher excess to be able to even retain some level of cover. I'm not the full expert, but I just am reflecting on the trends. And I was reflecting yesterday, watching some of the news coming out of New South Wales over their 100-year flood. Previous advice has been that the underwriters in London see these. Clearly, they naturally do, and that it also means that actually that it could well have impacts across the certainly our market as well. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. The other thing which actually I think we need to think about, and it's good that we're going through the LTP, is the tendency now for the underwriters to want specific information about specific authorities so that they can assess their risk. The quality of our asset management plans and being able to tell the story becomes increasingly more critical when it comes to renewal. But that's for our next meeting. Okay, can I move to the motion, please, which is that we receive the report and that we confirm that it's appropriate at the moment. There's nothing that I've heard that suggests they're allergic to what we have.
Chair, can I just ask a question about the second recommendation? I'm not actually clear on, I guess, process or what that's intended to mean. A question, I guess, of Michael, is there a subsequent resolution to be considered by the committee or council as to what the terms of the cover will be and what the premiums will be? Or is this effectively that decision?
For me, it's a regrettable point we're at, which is that this is in retrospect and it's reviewing what cover we have in place. Had we done it the other way around, which we will do going forward, is review, as you say, the terms and conditions prior to, then that would be, at the time you would have that recommendation.
When we get to our program, Lindsay, you will see that we have slotted in a separate item prior to the renewal round on 1 November, where we will consider our arrangements going forward. So I think that this is as much to reflect an accountability for the cover that we do have, and I think the second leg of the resolution is really just a chance for affirmation that we are comfortable with where we are at the moment. Doesn't mean to say that this isn't anything about the cover that we may or may not want to buy going forward.
Okay, so could I suggest on the strength of that, Chair, that the second resolution says something to that effect, that the committee confirms that the terms and premiums for the council's insurance cover set out in Appendix 1 to the report B, because then it nails what it is that we are saying is appropriate.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's a bit loose.
Can we get, look, perhaps I'm very comfortable we get that in there. So could you just help Malavika get the words right for that, please, Lindsay?
I got some words for you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Oh, that's even better than me. Well done. Yes, please. Yes, seeing we're doing it live, we should see that as we look to pass the motion. While Malavik does it, is there any other question people would like to raise?
Just the handwritten.
Critical point is that we're going to, yes, Nobby.
Yeah, just to go back to the issue I raised, I still don't understand why we've got a paper here that covers all the insurance that we've got, but it excludes what we've got under the arrangement with Riskful, which is our insurance for elected members. And if it's not to be here, then at what stage do we get to, I guess, have some discussion about that, given that we've had a pending court case that discussed the issue of third-party coverage. I'd like to think that somewhere along the lines, whatever arrangement we've got in place now has closed any loopholes that leaves us exposed again.
I think that we have some unclarity there, so I'd like to invite Michael to come back to us after the meeting, Nobby, just to clarify the nature of the cover and public liability, which must exist, including for councillors. So let's just get the clarity of the detail on that as we go forward.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Lindsay. Appreciate the detail. That makes good sense. So we obviously received reports. Secondly, the committee approves. Well, actually, I think we have entered. Sorry, Lindsay, I hadn't realised that was here. We have entered the contract, so it's not as if we can. It's actually more a case that we were to seek amendments. So I think we're approving contracts entered to provide material damage and business interruption insurance cover on terms and conditions and premiums set out in Appendix 1 to the report. We've entered them. It's not a case of entering.
I'll get that changed.
Entered, yes. So for the sake of the meeting in progress, could I please ask somebody were they prepared to move this motion? Thank you, Darren. Could I have a seconder? Thank you, Nobby. And we'll pass this on the basis of recognising that Michael will come back to all of us in relationship to your question, Nobby, with the details. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? It's carried. Thank you very much. Can I move to the Treasury report, please? Jamie, thank you. It was Darren and Nobby.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Right. I'll take the report as read. I'll just highlight a couple of things that have happened in the second quarter of the year. So we have drawn down 13.5 million from our GFA to advance funds to the holding group towards the city centre investments. And also we've renewed our RBNZ call loan facility for another 2 years, and that's facilities for 10 million. Is there any questions?
Right, thank you. So we've all been through this. I know from even some past workshops with you folk, the concept of our debt, our gross debt, our investments and our net debt position. And Jamie, I think it's important to look at the page 65. There are two key diagrams there. One is the red line, which is our debt ceiling that we have set ourselves. The pink line is where we anticipated being in our last long-term plan. And obviously the bar graph is the actual net debt that we hold. And I think the explanation underneath it is important as well. Not actually meeting your budget isn't necessarily, or rather being under your budget isn't always necessarily where you want to be. Mostly our debt is about enabling the creation and provision of services, not about trying to be in a particular position. So I think we just need to reflect on that, that the reason we're in that position is because of deferred capital projects and cash surpluses. And we've already heard something about actually the CapEx program and how far we are behind. Rightio, so that's that. And then secondly, an important part for this is Treasury policy compliance statement, which reflects what's in our advisor's comments further on. So can I raise, or open, for any questions, please? People like to raise? Yes, Nobby?
Yeah, following on from the Three Waters issue that we discussed just a few minutes ago, this graph's really important. I guess the initial reaction from most councils when you target Southern Region was to say, well, if you're taking over our Three Water assets, which is a huge chunk of our business, why would we invest in the next 3 years before you do that? Well, in fact, the reverse is actually the benefit. Got confirmation last week from DIA that when they transfer the assets in 3 years' time, they will take with it the debt. So for us, the way forward potentially is to make sure that we do our capital projects and don't delay them, to create the debt that needs to go, because the debt will disappear when the assets disappear. And then you get the benefit for the community, not the reverse. So that's quite an important graph to show us that we have some capacity to get our infrastructure up a certain level before it goes across to Three Waters.
I'd like to reflect that I was most interested in Nobby in the pink line, because that's actually where we were planning to be if we had the capacity to deliver on our capex.
Yep.
Which does include, I noticed, things like Three Waters renewal and what have you. So yes, I think we're all agreeing that we need to keep. Well, I think the sector is agreeing the need to keep up its Three Waters approach, even though reform is occurring.
Yeah, we've got some variations within the sector.
Yeah.
Some councils are helter-skelter on this, and they're investing hand over fist. Queenstown Lake District's a good example of that. But there are others that have gone well beyond the pink line, and they've now got problems.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, are there any other comments? Now, Jamie, I would, probably on behalf of the committee, but probably myself, want to ask the dumb question. Can we go to the compliance stuff, please? And can you explain to me the percentages? Because it says we're compliant, and I was trying to understand how the percentages fit within the policy limits.
Okay, so yeah, normally I'd get Miles to do these numbers. He knows the in and outs, so it might pay just get him to put up a paper next time around.
Okay.
To explain it, rather than me get it wrong here.
Okay, appreciate that. Michael, are you able to help us by any chance?
Only so far as to understand those percentages. I would suggest you look at, just trying to get the page.
Yeah, it's a great diagram.
Page 74.
Yes.
That shows the red lines show the limits that we need to operate in. The combination, you should see all of the, I think it's a green line, the top line separating the grey, shows we should stay within the two red lines pretty much throughout that whole period. We get very close in some of those periods in relation to our lines, which we need to work through about when we take our next rollover of debt, etc. So we're monitoring that quite closely at the moment in relation to staying within. Good news is we're at the bottom of our limits, not at the upper of our limits, but but I would agree with my staff around getting in the expert to actually give us a report on that.
So I'm just wanting to reflect to the committee, this is one of the critical things that we as a committee need to keep our eye on, is actually, are we within our treasury limits? And actually the nature of the position we take in the market in terms of fixed versus floating, and how to secure either the risk position we want to take is tied up in the living between the two red lines. And while I still don't quite get the percentages that exist inside the diagram, inside the graph, this diagram is actually reasonably important, that we're saying that there will be a minimum that we will have fixed. And I must confess, I was thinking it might have been the dotted line rather than the green line, but we'll take that on advice that actually we are compliant, and our advisor says that we are. But I think, Michael, I'm reflecting from the relative sentiment that I'm picking up from the meeting, that would be good if you and Jamie could follow through, please, on this key compliance area for us. Thank you. Right, again, if I could move us, please, to the motions. I think we probably do need to change this. So firstly, we received the report, Malavika. Could we go on the advice of our, I better check the right, Bancorp are our Treasury advisors. We note that there are no breaches of the policy. And I won't have it in the motion, but we'll recognise that you folk will come back so that we've got greater clarification in our collective minds as to the policies, how they stand, and how we interpret this better going forward. Thank you, Malavika. So I'll put the motion that we receive, and that we, on the basis of the advice, we move this. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Nobby. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? It's carried. Thank you. Right, moving along. We're going for time. Too bad. Well done, guys. It's good to see the energy. We'll get there. Can we please look at the sensitive expenditure report? And Jamie, you're still on the hot seat. Thank you.
Yep. Again, common theme. These are the sensitive expenditures that we've managed to get out of the system so far. Again, there will be some more to come through as we process over this next week, but we'll bring that in with the next report, as long as with the next quarter as well.
Mm-hmm.
Happy to move the two recommendations, Chair.
Cool. Can I just suggest one thing, Darren, though, seeing I'm interchanging motions, can I suggest that you would like to change number 2 to note the expenditure as reasonable? The reason I say that, the reason we have the sensitive expenditure here is actually we should be taking this as a sense check. Dare I say it, the front page test. Are we comfortable that this is at a right level, or what I'm using as the word reasonable? So I'd like to suggest, with your agreement, Darren,
Happy with that.
we change it to note the expenditure as reasonable. Is any, do I have a seconder for that, please? So Darren's moved. Thank you, Nobby. Seconds. Is there any discussion actually on the expenditure? I sense people's appetite is for me to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? There's an aye, I think, from down there somewhere. Marcus? Carried. Thank you. Appreciate that. Right, the risk insurance program, Michael.
So, Council, before you, I've put forward what is a proposed risk and assurance work program for the balance of the year. So, highlighting which reports will be brought forward. Draw your attention probably to the policy one that we'll still need to come back with a list of all the policies that we need to bring through. There's quite a number due this year for renewal, so there'll be quite a list for us to go through. But just wanted to highlight that that as an outstanding task to be done is to work through that list. The other item I'll draw to your attention was I was hoping to get the procurement policy to this meeting. You'll see it's been deferred until the 14th of June meeting on this timing, so hopefully that'll be ready for that meeting. I'll take the program as read and open to any questions.
Thank you, Michael. This is actually, oh, sorry, Ross. Go for it. And all I want to reflect is this is a strong piece of work by Michael and his team to upgrade our approach. It does look similar to the previous work plan we've had, but there's some significant qualitative changes to it, which I am obviously encouraged by, and obviously had some discussion with Michael over it. So it's starting to put, again, our work in the right place. Ross, you've got some questions.
Health and safety would appear to be omitted or dropped off.
Thank you. Yes, I would expect this committee to have health and safety in front of it, dare I say it, almost centre. So if we could include that, please. Anything else from folk in terms of the program? I just had one question, Ross. Sorry, Michael. If I've got it correct, we're recommending to the council that they adopt the annual report in December. That was last year. I don't presume we want to be December this year.
No, correct. That one will be subject change. I'll hopefully be able to bring that back to the 29th of
Good.
September.
Thank you.
So
I think that's reasonably important for us to recognise. We want to try and do it then. Okay, that's good. Good to have it in place. Just to recognise everybody that there are some key things that once we've identified our key risks at our June meeting, we'll be wanting to pick up on some regular what would be called deep dive or discussions with the GMs over the risks they own and how's it going. And that's tied up in that second banded part of the report on page 80, which is group risk discussion with GMs. That'll be really important as we start to start to deal with some of the questions you've raised over things like Three Waters. Right, could we move to the That's right. Okay, so we've got more changes to number 2, which I think is going to say that the work program with the addition of a quarterly health and safety report be noted. Oh, and the and
review of it.
Yeah, all the other adjustments. which I think it's within our scope to actually approve it. Actually, it's our program. We're saying it's good to go. Okay, so it is that we receive. Secondly, that with the inclusion of the health and safety report and the review of the timing of the annual report, the work program, and I'll ask the change be the word from noted to approved. Could I have a mover for that motion, please? Thank you, Ross. Could I have a seconder? Thank you, Rangi. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. It's carried. Thank you. Right, there is a very minor item from me, which is number 15. Which is review of performance and effectiveness of the Risk and Assurance Committee. This is a little matter that's dear to my heart, which is that by the next meeting, I will hopefully have got to, don't laugh. I will have asked you to undertake a survey. I'm conscious that all good council committees, if not council itself, and it's all part of working together as well, will self-assess their performance. And I've got some advice from Ross on an appropriate way for us as a Risk and Assurance Committee to review our performance. And I think we should go through that process so that we can, by June, which of course is the end of the financial year, have some sense about the comfort amongst members, and dare I say it, senior staff, about the work of the committee, and secondly, what I think will be an improving management of our risks. So I just really putting that as a heads up that we'll get that going. The fact that it's a verbal update, you might say, Mr. Chair, was it meant to be more than just a verbal update? Anyway, we're there, and we are there at 9:30. In fact, do folk need 3 minutes if they need a comfort stop, or can we crack on? Crack on? Okay, here we go. Thank you. You've helped me to get more or less on time to really a couple of very key papers. So, Michael, I think it's you with the finance system implementation update. Thank you.
Yes, good morning, Chair, Councillors, Your Worship. Before you have a report about the position of our current financial system and how the implementation is progressing, I think the key focus that I'll draw your attention to within this report is just the challenges that it's giving for the financial team with a resourcing depletion at the moment, which we are trying to rectify as fast as possible, but also the impact that that's having on our services as we speak. We still, as a council, remain committed to the financial system as our core financial processes going forward, and we are seeing some positive progress over the last few months, and I think our key stats are all pointing in the right direction from that perspective. We've turned a real corner over, I would say, since about December in relation to the system. I'll take the report as read and be open to any questions in relation to it.
As you consider the report, members, can I just point you to page 84? You may well have questions, by the way, prior to page 84. But before we finish this item, I would like to just have a focus on the key remaining tasks. Michael, perhaps it's a warning to you. Can I open this up for members of the committee for questions, firstly, for Michael? Yes, Darren.
Thank you, Chair. I guess, Michael, around tracking, we've identified that there were challenges in getting the best from the system, and then we had resourcing challenges. So you put steps in place to cover that off. Are we still tracking well to achieve those resets?
The stats we use to measure how we're progressing are all pointing in the right direction. Still remain under significant pressure within the finance team, and it's proving very difficult to recruit the required resource. We have been out 3 times to the market for a couple of roles, but we're continuing to go out. The positive side to that is our stats are still holding and improving. even with the resource we have. But I think we've heard in earlier agenda items what that's resulting in. From that perspective, it's putting pressure and timing in other areas. So.
Can you just, Michael, give us an indication, what are those stats, by the way? Sounds good. Stats are pointing in the right direction. What are the stats that might be helpful for Darren and the committee?
Yeah, so the core stats we're monitoring are our turnover of our purchase orders, so right down at the low level in relation to what I'm monitoring, but also our payment terms and meeting our payment terms with our suppliers. We had some issues getting those through in the when the system first went in. It was only a small teething time frame, but was pain felt by our suppliers as well. We have got on top of that from that perspective, we believe, and are processing those according to the timeframes we're getting our payments out. We've got our invoices down to processing the current month's invoices. We were 1 or 2 months behind in relation to those. So that's a key stat for me from that perspective, making sure our purchasing process is working.
Thank you for that. That's a very good, open, honest answer. Thank you for that, Michael. If I can just affirm you for that, and it reflects clearly the stress this is. Tech 1 was effectively needed, if I understand it correctly, but our implementation has been stretched. It's almost a perfect storm, if I understand it correctly, with both the LTP, the annual report, and resourcing issues affecting it. So can we go to the key remaining tasks then, please? Because I asked, Michael has kept me in the loop, and I appreciate that, Michael, about where's this at. And in that good governance said, but tell me the plan, because I'm very keen to know that we can get to the end of this. But actually it needs to be a plan that we also as a committee fully support. So look, I just want to reflect, you propose to have this completed, if I've read this correctly. Oh, sorry, the project closes down by 30 April. Essentially that means that you must be comfortable that it is in play. You are going to do a post-implementation review, which is actually a really good thing to do by 30 June. And the critical thing, as I understand it, you're saying here is that while technically the numbers are right, we need to make certain culturally our staff use it properly. Hence the need for a refresher, if not new training. Communications, clearly you've mentioned that critical word creditors, or in other words our suppliers, and you're keeping them in the loop as far as that's concerned. And I think as a council we should be concerned about that from a reputational perspective. And there are 4 module timelines which are critical to completing the Tech 1 introduction. And you've got some dates around that. That's a good man. Is there anything we can do to support you, mate? Apart from the fact that I'm no techo, so I can't help you there.
I'll call out if there's any resources, we're always looking. But apart from that, just keep us on our toes and keep us to our timelines will be appreciated as well. The pressure will help us to see this through and get it complete.
I'm not certain I like putting staff under pressure. I would rather we had a soft landing on this one, Michael. It's there. I don't sense at this point there is an immediate solution. Is there any sort of reporting support that we could provide for you during the course of this time? Probably us keeping out of the fire would make it even better.
Chair, the one thing that the committee and council as a whole has been very supportive of is not putting the pressure on in relation to the reporting side of it, which is a key strain. If that support remains as we go through, and just be aware that we are still heading towards our June timeline, so that's our critical focus. But the support that we've had from council today has been amazing, and I would also say from our executive team, from our reporting as well. So we're very mindful that we are not getting the information out, but we're also working towards that at speed and as a full team effort. So we appreciate the support we are getting from that perspective.
I think behoves us to ask the one question: you are comfortable, despite the challenges of Tech One, that you are comfortable that we have still got suitable financial management control?
Yes, at this point, yes.
Are there any other questions from the committee? I'm surprised there's not.
And just following from that, confident you'll have enough support post end of April when the consultants, your key consultants disappear. Or plan B.
We have a plan in place around the recruitment with the consultants. It's kind of a live plan in relation to we're still working through getting those consultants to support us post-April. I've just come from last week working with my counterparts right across the country to see what resources are available. And it's fair to say this is felt right throughout New Zealand in relation to the pressure in this side. It's on the flip side, they're also very supportive. The one thing that will help us will be the opening up of the Trans-Tasman bubble. The reason for that is the product we have is predominantly serviced out of Australia. That's where a lot of the technical resources are that we will be able to tap into. So that'll be something as soon as that's open, we'll be looking at that as a possibility as well.
Okay, so look, I think I hear the message that we, I'm glad, have been supportive and still are incredibly, Michael. And I think we need to get keep that policy of keep letting you get on with this as it goes. Look, I just invite you, if there are any matters that you need to raise for the benefit of the committee, please do so with me and with Claire as we work through this, so that it gets there. If there's no other questions, I would like us to move to the recommendations, please, which is firstly that we receive the report, and secondly, it's that we note the challenges to the organisation of the new ways of working with this finance system. I'm happy to move that. Do I have a second, please? Thank you, Rangi. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? It's carried. Thank you, Michael. Again, I just want to support staff in this. Thank you for being so crystal clear with us over the challenges. You have been for a good period of time now, and you've continued that. And we've now got another good bit of clarity from Erin and Tess, which is superb. We can move, please, to the Project Management Office status report. Welcome, folk.
Morning. Just the appendix. I'm sorry. I wasn't aware of that. I was going to transfer it until then. Okay.
We have our papers here, and we will, if we can get it going. But we all have the appendix. It's the colourful one. I take it
is
inside
the one.
inside.
Yes.
Love a diagram test. You've got a long way already with the committee when you come to me with a diagram. That's great.
Good. That's good to hear. It's difficult to present so much information and try and make it as concise as possible. So this report provides a summary of the projects that have been identified within the Project Management Office. The purpose of the report is to identify those projects that are tracking to green, which is okay, amber, which means that we're watching them, and red is a project that we're escalating and we're working through ways to resolve the issues. In terms of the report, would you like me to go through each of the projects or focus on specific ones?
Well, look, I would like your view, please, Tess, before I open it up to the members. What is it that you would like to draw our attention to?
Look, I
suggest
think
the reds if you
I think the reds make sense, and there's going to be a common theme running through this, which isn't dissimilar to Michael in terms of resourcing. So in terms of the streetscapes project, so that's the stage 1 streetscapes upgrade that's happening to facilitate the priority projects in the city. We do have scheduling concerns on that one. We're There are multiple fronts in terms of what we've got to work through, integrating with the priority projects, making sure those projects can carry on while we undertake the streetscapes. And we've also got to do some 3 water renewals in those streets as well, because we don't want to be coming back in the next 10 years and ripping up the work that we've already done. So from a scheduling perspective, it is quite complicated. Financially, we're having to deliver a lot in a short time frame. So that always creates issues in terms of how the market is going to respond. So we'll be asking a lot from contractors. So from a cost perspective, there are some concerns around how we're going to be able to achieve it. The scope, when we're running quickly with this project, so just ensuring that we stay true to the purpose of the master plan is something that we're obviously working through closely, but we don't want to lose sight of what the scope is in the master plan. And look, resourcing is going to be very demanding on this project, with a lot of other work that's happening around the district in the civils infrastructure space. So we have a plan in place, but we are quite concerned from a resourcing point of view. And then we've got a number of dependencies on this project too, which I've just alluded to in terms of those other priority projects and working with 3 waters as well. Stakeholders is obviously critical on this project. You know, we've got the community, the retailers that we've got to work with. So there's a very high level of stakeholder engagement on this project, which is all leading us to a point where it's a critical project in terms of just some of the challenges that we're working through.
Thank you. Just perhaps just finish off and before I open up, because I'm sure there'll be questions from the members.
Sorry. So in terms of the SMAG, which is the next project that we've highlighted as being a critical project, so that's the Southern Museum and Art Gallery. From a schedule perspective, it's going to be a big project to get moving. We're obviously working through the long-term plan, so the project until we go through consultation, we're just waiting to hear back on that. From a scope perspective, there's going to be a lot of competing interests on that project. So ensuring that the budget that we've got matches the people's expectations in terms of the scope is going to be quite critical. Dependencies, obviously, it's an important project for the community, so we've highlighted that as red. And again, with stakeholders, there's going to be a myriad of stakeholders involved in this project. So if it does come to light, then it's going to be reasonably complicated from that perspective. And then the last project that we've highlighted as a red project is the water tower. The water tower has proved quite challenging in terms of the extent of the structural strengthening to a Category 1 heritage listed building. We've had to go through a structural peer review, which is just about complete, but it has posed some challenges, which have had some financial implications. Again, the scope with a Category 1 heritage building is quite complicated in terms of what you can and can't do. Resourcing, it's going to be a demanding project in terms of the type of work that needs to be completed, and finding the right contractor could be complicated. And then from a quality perspective, just making sure what we do provide with the limitations of a heritage building ticks people's boxes when the project is finished.
Thank you, Tess. That's very helpful and insightful. Erin, is there anything you wanted to add to that, or are you?
I think the only thing that I'd add is that we have challenged ourselves quite toughly with how we've scored these, and there is a lot of red. There was certainly something that was discussed at our ELT when we brought this through. I guess what I wanted to note is that in terms of setting up a project management office, we identified that as going to be our preferred way forward back at the end of November. We had 8 weeks was the schedule we gave ourselves to get that project management office up and running, which we stuck to. At the end of that 8 weeks, which was the beginning of February, we ran this process across the projects, and there was a lot more red on the scorecard at that time, which means this is actually an improved picture from what we did have at that time. So we are tracking in the right direction, but we definitely want to be very clear that this is a difficult, tight program with a lot of moving pieces and a lot of resource requirements. So we're going to have to keep a very tight hold on it.
Well, thank you, Erin. So I sense there's probably 2 or 3 sort of key areas to discuss here. One is clearly, Richard, just if I started what I see systems at the start, the existence now of a project management office the core discipline of actually how do we deliver our projects full stop. There's the projects themselves, which Tess has given us, at least my guidance, of focus on the reds. You may have questions on the others. And actually also importantly, a couple of common themes that are running through the projects, which are actually on the right-hand side of the diagram, which is some of the systemic issues you're facing, which you've indicated as internal resourcing and probably the contractor market and its capacity. So that's very helpful. I open it up for members to raise questions if they have any. There are none. Amazing. Nobby.
No, I can't let that go by.
It was a challenge for me, Nobby. There must be a
no,
question here, mate.
Must be. I guess one of the issues through your chair will be the consultation process. An awful lot of work gone into this and forward planning, both from Aaron's perspective and from Michael's perspective, around how we manage these projects going forward, including financials and ability to deliver. But if we've gone too far down this track, and I don't think we have, but if we have, and I heard some timeframes before that said consultation finishes in, and then about a month later we have to get it to audit. Our ability to change where we're at the moment is just about zero. And one of the issues for me, I guess, around that is why are we consulting if we don't have any ability to change? And the big issue and the big elephant in the room, of course, is the new museum, or the Strengths Museum, or SMAG, whatever you want to call it. That's pushed out in our long-term plan, and I'm not sure there'll be a community acceptance of that. So I suspect the feedback system we'll get in the next month or so will overwhelm us on that, and some staff have alluded to that. That's the take I have, and so I'm not sure that process-wise we've actually got this right. I think it seems to me in some ways that we'll listen to what the community's got to say, but then we'll say for a whole raft of reasons we can't deliver what you want. So this is not just a what you want in the next month. The community have signalled way back in the August last year what they wanted by way of project prioritisation. So I guess we're going to have a bit of a dilemma when we get to that, I guess.
Aaron, you were going to make a comment?
Yeah, I'll just make the comment. I won't talk to the challenges of putting together the long-term plan, but I guess I just wanted to talk to running a project management office across a long-term plan period and how we adapt that process. I think the position that we would like to get to is that from a maturity perspective, we would always be expecting to run our projects across more than one long-term plan period. And that doesn't mean that things don't change as we go through a long-term plan process and we can't adapt to that. We essentially just, we put in place a plan at a point in time. We continue to work to that. If something changes through the long-term plan process, then we come back, we make the adjustments that we need to make, and we continue to move forward. That's not unusual really for any process as a council starts to mature through these programs, because projects are long lead time items, and we will find that if we actually want to deliver on these long lead time programs, we need to be starting them ahead of a long-term plan process.
Thank you. Yes, Rangi.
I think this report and the chart here is actually very helpful leading into the long-term plan discussions, because it clearly identifies what we've got to do first, and it's no different than looking after your own house. I mean, why would you go buy a new lounge suite when you got a hole in the roof and the wind's blowing through? I mean, it's just crazy, and that's what this committee is here for. And hopefully, these priorities, the key things that council should be doing to make this, this city a livable place, as far as you've got the cityscape, you've got the Steed Street Stock Bank, and those critical 3 water renewals have to take priority over the next projects. That's a no-brainer, and that needs to be, this information needs to feed into when we discuss it later on this year.
Thanks, Rangi. Sorry, I think Darren might have been first. Leslie, then you, Leslie.
Thanks, Chair. Look, I just wanted to make a comment about what can and can't be changed, picking up on what Councillor Clark was saying. It is very hard, in fact almost impossible, to change what you're consulting on. at this stage, not what the ultimate decision is. That's not to say that once we've finished the consultation that the time frame that we'll have to come up with a decision isn't going to be compact and challenging itself. But what we're going to go out and consult on is what we have no room to change at this point.
Thanks, Darren. Leslie?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. It's a very minor point, but on page 87, can someone just remind me why there's a reference to the Scottish Hall in the resources description?
Sorry, that's on as part of the appendix on the first page, is it? Is that what-
Page 87. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, first page.
Oh, it is too. I wonder what I was thinking.
I was just puzzled.
I'm sorry, there is no reason why that should be there, so I don't know why I wrote the Scottish Hall.
Perhaps it's autocorrect. It's a bit like Streetscape or something.
Yeah, actually, I do know why I wrote it. When we were looking at the cab refurb, we were talking about the Scottish Hall as being somewhere where we were going to temporarily relocate staff. So that, obviously, I failed to delete that piece.
Thank you. Thank you.
Apologies.
That's all right. I just wondered if there was some significance here.
Well, there was a very successful Celtic gathering there.
Good. Patrick's Day.
Served its purpose well.
Great.
I wonder if we just test move to 88, and I think this probably also reflects the point you made, Erin, which is actually the multiple period or year type nature of these projects and your need to be front loading the development in effect. That's what it really comes down to make certain we can hit, actually dare I say it, our net debt target, amongst other things.
Can I just make a correction on this page with the cab refurb? We've currently got in for that project to be completed in 2023. That's an error. It should be 2025. So we'll make that correction.
Thank you.
So the purpose of this program is to demonstrate just the challenge in terms of the PMO delivering the variety of projects at various different stages. Some of these projects you will see will be in design while other projects will be in construction. So it is important to note that not everything will be in construction. And there's a mix of vertical and horizontal construction in there as well.
So look, is there anything you can tell us about just the actual development of the PMO? At all? Is anything relevant we should hear at this point? Because obviously it's the engine through which you're driving this control.
I'm happy to speak to that. So what we've done at the moment is we've developed up what a structure looks like for the project management office, both in terms of a team as well as in terms of how we move through the various stages of the project, from a project control group through to our steering control group through to governance through the Risk and Assurance Committee. The internal team heading up the project management office, we've decided to keep to a smaller team. That allows us to supplement the team with external project management resources as well. And we're in the process of reviewing bids from the external market for that external support. What that mix of internal and external resource allows us to do is to get up and running a lot quicker than we would have been able to otherwise, because we're not trying to staff a big entity internally. But it also allows us to gear up and down our resource levels as we move through various different stages of the projects, as we will have some areas where we need greater levels of resource, and then we'll drop those resource levels down and come back up as we move into other stages. So essentially what we'll be doing is partnering with key strategic partners in the project management space and the quantity surveying space to move through this program with us, and we'll be in a position to advise of those strategic partners in the coming couple of weeks.
Like you said, with that in terms of development, you get your professional, I noticed in your achievements, you got your professional services panel up and running as well too. So you're starting to get some of those core entry points for these projects in place.
Yes, and as much as we are talking about tight timelines, there's also been quite a lot of achievement in terms of getting contracts up and running. As we all know, we're a public entity, we're not a private entity, so we've got a few extra hoops we need to jump through in terms of making sure that we follow appropriate procurement processes on these projects. the fact that for the streetscapes, for example, we've already got project managers in place, quantity surveyors in place, our design lead in place, and we've been out to market and shortlisted down to our 2 main construction contractors, of which we'll move through a tender process with them. Things like that are real positives for us. So far we're keeping to the extremely tight timelines that we've set ourselves, but we don't have any room for any mistakes within our program.
I hear your point. So that just gets us then to the right-hand side of the diagram. We'll go back up one page. And I was particularly interested in the contractor market and the stress on resources. This is, if I can take the committee's time, just as a constant theme around my other engagements elsewhere around the country, that we are all assuming and are even seeing some tightening of the market. What's our approach to warning the market, sensitising the market to our needs going forward?
So we're doing a couple of things in that respect. One is partly leveraging off the relationships that I bring and the team brings, in terms of making sure that contractors are aware of our program, having meetings with them. For the streetscapes projects, for example, there was phone calls and meetings with key contractors that we thought that we could draw in to come and bid our projects. We are, now that we have those shortlisted contractors for streetscapes, we're probably less nervous about the horizontal infrastructure resourcing, and our nervousness really moves into that vertical infrastructure space. We have a piece of work that we are doing around what is the capacity of that market over the next 5 years, both in terms of what Invercargill has in the pipeline, obviously the buildings that are underway, the tower that will be going in, the Bunnings that will be going in. We're going to be competing with the private sector through that next 5-year period. So what does Invercargill's program look like? What does our program look like? Where are we going to get those key constraints? And frankly, what contractors are planning to be here over that time, and what do we need to do to work with those who perhaps weren't planning to be here to give them visibility. We also want to make sure that we get our programs, we're doing some work around getting our program on the national infrastructure pipeline. So we've noticed that there's been, national entries in magazines talking about the construction boom that's happening in Invercargill. Who'd have thought it a few years ago?
See the cranes there.
At this stage, though, what Invercargill City Council has on its program isn't showing up as part of that Invercargill construction boom. So we need to make sure that we get our stuff front and centre there, so that those firms that are thinking about potentially making that move down here get that full picture of what work's available.
Great. Thank you for that. That's very encouraging, if I can say that from my perspective, Erin, and Tess, the change here that I've seen. And again, and similar to Michael's paper, good transparency as to where we're at. So I congratulate you. Can I move to the recommendation, please, which is that we receive the report? Is somebody prepared to move that? Thank you, Darren. Thank you, Rangi. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? It's carried. Thank you, guys. That's tremendous. I would like us to then move to urgent business. I haven't been informed of urgent business. Do members need to raise anything that I should be aware of? You don't? Can I just move then, please, to the motion to move into public excluded for the reasons that are outlined in your papers. I'll move from the chair that we move into public excluded. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Nobby. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? It's carried. Can I suggest, it's 10 o'clock. I have to be finished by 11. Can we have a 5-minute break while arrangements are made to